Just want to show y'all my cold frame system, which is pretty awesome. Even this janky version that I made here. What are those called? Sliding glass doors. Yeah. And these are double pane, but they absolutely do not need to be double pane. The amount of protection afforded by a simple single wall greenhouse or something like this is pretty surprising in terms of like degrees of frost that it will prevent. I don't know what those numbers are, but I think most people would be surprised at how much protection it offers. So let me just open these up and I'll show you what's up and how I would build this if I were doing like a really good version. So this has been really handy for wintering over little seedlings without taking up a bunch of space in the other greenhouses. They survive absolutely fine out here. I'll typically let them pretty much dry out for most of the winter. I might water them once during the winter, but probably not till spring. So these have grown for another year past like something like these. And I just had to take out like a couple flats of Bridgesii that were too tall. You can see that one there's leaning over because it's too tall. I think if I built this again, I would definitely build it higher. So that's about 20 inches. I would go probably with a minimum of 24 inches. I don't really think there's any reason to make the back wall short. I don't think it needs to be small or sized for the size of the cactus that's in there or anything like that. It's just like a greenhouse. So maybe even like 2.5, 3 feet. And that's just going to give you more leeway. You can use it for more things, you know, basically. So I'd probably make the back wall minimum 24 inches up to maybe even 3 feet. The front wall you want to keep low, and I wouldn't make the depth much deeper than this because you'll end up overreaching. You know, it's just going to be a hassle reaching in there. Same with the front wall height. So these are, that's like 28 inches. So that's probably right. I would make it maybe no more than 30 inches deep, and probably less is better. I had something come in here and literally pick up, you see how packed these are? Literally it picked up a bunch of those, literally turned some of them over upside down, didn't eat any cactus, but it was a bunch, like 10 or 12 pots were just displaced, pulled up, and I'm like, what even does that? Like, I was trying to think of the most likely suspects, like maybe a skunk looking for bugs, like looking for slugs down there. I don't know if they actually eat slugs, but they eat mostly bugs, and they do dig a lot. But it would have to like pick the edge of the pot up with its teeth and pull it out. Like a raccoon might be able to grab the pots and lift them, but for what? Like, what's the incentive? And then the only other thing I could think of was ravens, which are very agile. They have agile beaks. Maybe they could lift the pots out, but again, why? And nothing was eaten on, so very strange. So who knows what's going to happen? You have to get in there and tend stuff and shift stuff around and move it and replace it and all that stuff. So yeah, not too deep either. I just happen to have this bank here, which is, you know, backed by dirt, and I just had some really scrappy plywood. Like some of this plywood barely held together long enough to cut it and stake it in place. But I don't really care. It's just a temporary structure for me, and it works just fine. Like this fiberglass roofing, I wanted something that would let a little light in, and I had this stuff, and it's really brittle. Like it's not much use to like build a greenhouse or anything. So I literally just folded it in half until it cracked lengthwise, and then stuck these pieces in here, a few cinder blocks. But if I was building this all over, like a nice version that was permanent, red brick, cinder block, you know, something like that for the main body, and then something translucent, not like pure glass, but more like translucent, so maybe like frosted glass or something like this in the front that it was removable. It's best to keep these things simple, so maybe it's something that just slides into like a frame and you just lift it out. Would be better. If it's no higher than this right here, which is probably like, what's a cinder block, 15.5? Yeah, so about 16 inches. I mean, I suppose you could make it permanent, but I would make it translucent, because if you look at this and imagine if this were a brick wall and none of those cactus were getting any light, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, this thing's awesome. Like this year I'm not even going to fill it all up, so I probably won't even put that other piece of glass on. It saved a lot of cactus from either freezing or taking up tons of space in my greenhouse. The cat likes it. She goes in there to get warm. So I will typically leave this closed for the whole winter into like maybe even late spring. But at some point it starts to get too hot in there and the cactus will start to sunburn. It's also pretty easy to shade. When I put new seedlings in here, if I think they're going to get sunburned or, you know, they're really small, which they often are, or they often do, it's easy enough to throw a piece of shade cloth like just on top of the glass, or if the glass is already removed, just, you know, kind of stretch shade cloth from front to back and weight it with a couple 2x4s or something. Basically, you can turn it into a shade house for the summer. Pretty cool system if you have the right spot for it and need this sort of thing like I do.